welcome to the Hokies basketball season preview. I'm your host, Derek Allen.
And I'm Katie Tepsick. We're joined here today with Evan Hughes, the voice of Hokies women's basketball. Thank you so much for joining us, Evan.
Oh, it's great to have you guys here. Thanks so much for coming all the way over.
Well, the first question we've got for you, Evan, is the biggest news right now coming out of Hokies women's basketball. Liz Kitley's return to Blacksburg. So can you outline what her role is going to be and what her team, what the power is going to be for the team?
Absolutely. Well, super exciting anytime you have one of the GOATs return to Blacksburg. First off, when I think about the Mount Rushmore of Virginia Tech athletes, I think Liz Kitley is on there. 3-time ACC Player of the Year. Jersey retired less than a year after her playing career. ACC titles in the Final Four. So I think what's really cool, a couple things. One is that she's still committed to wanting to be a professional basketball player. But the way that the pro leagues work is that she has an off season to where she could come back and be here at Virginia Tech. I think what's also really cool is the relationship that she's formed with Coach Duffy. Even though she didn't play for her, she's still so close to the program. She played with Carly Wenzel. She's got familiarity with Karis Baker and Mackie Nelson, who redshirted her final year. So I think a couple of things on Liz coming back. One, she's going to help from an NIL standpoint and help kind of strengthen the different relationships that Virginia Tech women's basketball has with different corporate sponsors. And I think anytime you bring somebody with the platform and the notoriety that Liz has, that can only benefit the program and the current roster. And then what's really neat about Liz is that she has expressed an interest in broadcasting. And so there's going to be some games where Liz is actually going to call some games with me on radio and might get to do some games on TV, which is really cool for me to get to call it with her. So I think she's going to have her hand in a lot of different things, but bringing Liz back can only elevate and help, and I think it's a great move from Coach Duffy.
Well, now you mentioned Carly Wenzel, and we see the women's team has varying levels of experience from, of course, Carly Wenzel to international freshman Spella Bretzel.
Yep.
Now, how do you think this diversity of ages will help the team, and what do you think this will bring to the season?
Well, the word diverse, I think, is really a good one. Overall with the roster, I think you've got a good balance and makeup of returners. And a lot of those returners who got put in new roles last year, like Carly Wenzel, like Karis Baker, who now know what it takes to go through an entire season of being the focal points. So I think that can only benefit. And they've got experience, but to your point, they've brought in a really talented freshman class. I like the transfers they brought in. Mel Daly from Northwestern, somebody who averaged over double figures in a Big Ten role at Northwestern. Sophie Swanson's going to be a lethal three-point shooter. And to your point about the ages, I think that's a good thing, is that the freshmen are walking in to a situation where Coach Duffy's been here a year. She's put her stamp on the program. The returners know the expectation and what it means to play for her and her system. So I think it's a great time for those youngsters to come in and kind of learn from those players who have been there and done that.
Speaking of learning, we do have going against Towson, the Hokies, on November 4th with tip-off at 6 p.m. How do you think the Hokies will react and do the season with a 5-game home stretch?
Well, I love that you brought that up. I think the way that Coach Duffy constructed the schedule, I like that there's a lot of home games early in November because really, yes, obviously winning is the most important thing. But in November, I think it's critical for those new pieces to get on the floor and for coaches to learn who works well in certain rotations. How can they build off that going into ACC play? There's still so much, even though these teams have been practicing since May, that you don't know until the lights are on, the fans are in the stands, the broadcast is rolling, and you don't really know until you see your team play literally in an arena, in a real game setting. So to play 5 games at home, to kind of get some comfortability, whether it's the transfers, the freshmen, whether it's Samaya Suffren coming off of injury. The last 2 years, Virginia Tech's played Iowa in the Spectrum Center in the second game of the year. 2 years ago, that was against Caitlin Clark. So while that's great, I think it's a good thing with there being some new pieces and players in new roles to have those games at home and to learn a lot about yourself before you go on the road.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit earlier about the returners, and we've got 6 of them, 3 of which are going to be the key players. Mackenzie Nelson, Karis Baker, Carly Wenzel. What's the importance of having these strong returners in this era of NIL and transfer portal?
It's a great question because we're in a day and age where you don't know what your roster is going to look like on a year-to-year basis. As much as you recruit the portal and freshmen, you're also recruiting your current roster at the end of the day. And I think Coach Duffy, you think about her coming in, and when Liz graduated and Georgia Amore went to Kentucky and they lost so much, she was able to keep Carly Wenzel, Karis Baker, Mackenzie Nelson, and the job that she did coming in, even though she didn't recruit those players out of high school, she got them to stay and to have gotten them to totally buy into what she wants to do here at Virginia Tech. So to have continuity, to answer your question, Katie, going into a year with players who were in marquee roles like last year, you cannot put a price tag on how valuable that is. And those are the players that you're going to lean on. I think Karis Baker is poised for a breakout season. She was in double figures in all but 2 ACC games last year. Carly Wenzel, somebody who can obviously run the point but can play the 2 or the 3. Great three-point shooter, can drive. She was top 4 in the ACC in free throws attempted last year. So when a coach has players that he or she can rely on and know what they can do, that's a luxury, because a lot of coaches in this day and age have new pieces and they don't really know what they're going to have until the season starts in November. That's not the case for this team.
Now, I'd like to circle back to the games. Now, we do have 12 non-conference games, and we do have one of them being in the U.S. Virgin Islands against BYU.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
How excited the team is to actually do something like that?
And the broadcaster's really excited. Yes. You know, it's something on both the men's and the women's side. For a long time now, these Thanksgiving hoop tournaments are very real and happen all over, not just in the United States, but in different countries as well. And what's great about them is typically this is a chance for it to be, more times than not, the first time teams really go on the road. And there's an art to going on the road and learning what it's like to travel, to get good sleep on the road, what you need to do, because it's a long wait sometimes when you travel and you got a 7 o'clock tip-off and you're waking up at 8 o'clock. Like, it's a skill to learn how to travel and to execute a successful business trip, as they call it, when it comes to these games. I think the Virgin Islands, Virginia Tech plays BYU first, and then if they win, the hope is, at least from my side, I hope they're going to play Vanderbilt, who's a really good top 25 team. So you do a lot of things. You take your team on the road to a different place. Yes, it's cool. It's not really a vacation, except maybe for the broadcaster for a little bit. But all jokes aside, you learn a lot about your team in a different place. And those are games that can make a difference on your resume. You look at Virginia Tech last year, they were the first team that was left out of the NCAA tournament. So they were right there. And when you play quality teams in your non-conference, in addition to what you're doing in the ACC, that sometimes can be the difference in you being on the right side of the bubble compared to the wrong.
Absolutely. And, you know, the Hokies are going to have a pretty difficult season, lots of big games coming up, and 5 ACC teams alone are ranked in that preseason poll. How do you think the Hokies are going to keep up with that 5-game stretch of really difficult teams?
You know, the ACC year in and year out over the last couple of years has been phenomenal. I think the ACC over the last 5 years has been the deepest league in women's college basketball, right there with the SEC. The SEC might have had a little bit more firepower, but in terms of depth, I think the ACC's had the SEC's number there. And the way the schedule works for Virginia Tech, I mean, they're going to open with Duke, who won the league in December. I believe they've got Florida State early, not looking on the top of my head. Miami is revamped, so they've got a couple of tough ones to open. And then to finish, I think the last 5 games are going to be a pivotal stretch for the Hokies. I think the good news here, you know, Coach Dovey's talked about it. She's gone through a full year of what the ACC is like. She knows how to get her team from December through February, and truly the grind that it is. Wenzel, Baker, Nelson, Suffren, so many players coming back. They know what it takes. And you just can't put a price tag on experience, but also experience in the ACC. And I think you're able to lean on that, and that's how the Hokies are going to be able to get through a long 3-month stretch of conference play.
Now, speaking of that preseason poll, the Hokies have been ranked to finish 10th out of 18 with no players being named to the preseason All-ACC team. Now, how do you expect this to motivate the team heading to this season?
I think it does motivate them a little bit. And to be honest with you, it is cliche. I don't think they're paying attention as much to that, believe it or not. But I do think they see that. You know, they're down there in Charlotte when the media announces at ACC tip-off, you know, where the predicted order of finish is going to be. I think it's a Tech team that, again, was last year finished 8th in the ACC standings, 1 game away from the NCAA tournament, and that was with a team that you had so much new last year. It was so impressive to me what they were able to do. You bring so much back. I think this Tech team feels like they are a tournament team. They expect to win in the postseason, and I do think it fuels them a little bit. I think the good news right now, the ACC, there's so many question marks, right? Notre Dame, a lot of hype around them last year. They lost a lot. Duke lost the ACC tournament MVP Alicia Okanawa to Maryland. There's an open window, and I think the Hokies are one of those teams that feel they can surge and make a push to ultimately, you want to finish in the top 4 in the ACC standings because that gets you a double bye at the ACC tournament, meaning you only have to win 3 games to win a conference title. So that's what it's about. I think Tech has that team. They believe that that's the most important thing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Evan. We're unfortunately out of time, but we will be back after a quick break with Zach Mackey, who is the voice of Hokies men's basketball.
Everyone has a ritual, that small thing to keep us focused.
A habit we never skip, to clear our minds and elevate our performance.
But what do you do to keep your head in the game? To drown out the self-doubt and support your mental health. Because being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mental health. Discover the resources that you need to keep your mind focused and your mental health a priority.
Welcome back from the break. Now we have Zach Mack, who's in his 4th year being the voice of the Hokies men's basketball. Thank you for joining us, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me out, guys. I'm excited for it.
All right. Now, Coach Young has mentioned multiple times how important it was to return these 4 players, with those being Ben Hammond, Toby Lawal, Tyler Johnson, and Jaden Shute. Now, how beneficial will it be for these Hokies to come back, and what are the projected impacts for this season?
Yeah, they're big impacts. I mean, I think at the end of last year, the last couple of years, it hasn't gone the way Virginia Tech wants. They haven't made the NCAA tournament. They haven't gotten to, kind of the pinnacle of men's basketball, that NCAA tournament. So they were going to have to revamp and totally change things. Last year was a struggle at times, and it's a new day and age with NIL and transfer portal. You can go out, you can go get people, but you also have to retain your roster. And I think the Hokies did a really good job. They were in a position where they were able to return the 4 that they really wanted to. It's recruiting for the future, but it's recruiting your roster to stay back and have those guys that are going to make an impact. So they went out and were able to get a lot of guys to surround the 4 that they felt like they could build this team around and hopefully get back to the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely, and going off of that, our newcomers are going to be Neo Avadalis. We've got Amani Hansberry transferring in, also Jalen Bedford and Isaiah Pasha. What do you think they are going to bring to the court with the returners?
Yeah, I think they are new guys, but they are people and guys who have played elsewhere and have playing experience in the NCAA tournament, even in the professional rank. So, Neo is a guy, a freshman who's coming in from Greece. There's a lot of hype around him. I think he's the number 2 international prospect coming in and chose Virginia Tech, and rightfully so. I mean, he's a freshman, but he's played basically professional basketball over there. And I know Coach Young talked about, do you see the ACC continuing to go international with players? And it just makes sense with those guys, in the States, you play high school basketball, you're playing against your peers, guys your age, and a lot of times with the international flair, they're able to go out and they're able to play professional, play against people who have played it for a lot longer in that. They just come with a higher skill set. So I know they're really excited about them. They're really excited about a lot of the guys on the roster. Dorn, the big 7-footer down inside, Tony Dorn, can move well and can get up and down the court for a 7-footer is big. And then they had to add some depth at the point guard spot. That was evident from last year. And getting a guy like Jalen Bedford from UNLV was a big get, too. And Neo can play a little point guard, too. So, yeah, I think they got the right mix of keeping those guys who were here last year, have a little bit of a sense of what Virginia Tech is about, and can help those new guys kind of integrate well.
Now let's talk about those who are on the roster but don't necessarily play on the court, and that is Coach Mack Young's coaching staff, which underwent a partial overhaul, bringing in associate head coach Chester Frazier and assistant coach David Motes, as well as general manager Nelson Hernandez. Now, what do you think they'll bring to this program?
Well, I think, Chester brings energy. I think he also brings a recruiting kind of asset that they were missing the last couple of years. They made a change, got Chester. He was here at Virginia Tech. He left to go to his alma mater at Illinois, was at West Virginia. He's won where they've gone. They've been to the NCAA tournament everywhere there. And, Coach jokes about it. He tells the story, and he told us on Saturday, we had our tip-off event, that he went there and just drove up to West Virginia and showed up at the house and knocked on the door and told him how important he was to this program and what he could do and why he needed to come back, and convinced him to come back to Virginia Tech. And with that was the connection to Neo Avdalas. That's how the Hokies were able to get in on that, and because of that connection. So that's big. I think college basketball, the way it's going, you need a GM really to be able to steer the ship. I know last year, talking with Coach Young, I mean, at times in the middle of the season, he's talking to agents and talking to players and all that. It's difficult. It's hard to do while you're trying to coach a basketball season. So if you have a GM in that role, that's great. Coach Moats joins the staff too from Boise State. I think he's a great young addition to the staff too. So I think they're excited about not only what they got with the court, but the coaching staff they've established around it too.
And there are really big expectations for this team this year. I mean, following ACC Media Day, the Hokies have been listed as a top contender for the potential championship in the conference. So how are they handling that added pressure heading into year 6 under Mike Young?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a mix of both, because some people who are really well connected and know, it's hard now. I mean, there's 10 new guys on this roster to know what you can expect and what, goes together. There's people who know what, Neo is about and what he did internationally, and there's high praise there. But also, I think in the preseason poll they were picked to finish 12th, which is not where they, want to finish. So you kind of have that mindset too that, hey, some people are talking about us, but for the most part, we're still unknown, and we're still the team that's going to have to climb the ladder and find a way to, kind of get things started. And obviously, a couple of games into the season, you get kind of more of a sense of who's got what.
Now, carrying on and getting things started, coming off of Saturday's home exhibition game against Duquesne, what are some reactions and expectations before the home opener on November 3rd against Charleston Southern?
Yeah, we talked to Coach about this on Saturday, and he said, listen, we've got to improve. We've got a young group. I think they struggled to be able to close out halves. I think we're outscored by 20 at the end of the first half, at the end of the second half. So being able to close out games is a thing you've got to learn as a player, as a team, and that's what they're going to work on and try to do throughout the course of the next couple of weeks. I think there's no need to get in a situation where you're really nervous about everything and that over an exhibition game. Duquesne plays in the A10, and it's a great basketball league. But yet, no, Coach just said we've got to keep improving, and we're going to look to keep doing that.
And we've got a lot of notable games this season. There's the battle for Atlantis over Thanksgiving break. We're home versus Duke. We're at Louisville, at North Carolina. What is the key about these games and the other games across the season that will be big for the Hokies to have a strong show out?
Yeah, I like the way the schedule's set up, because you're going to get the opportunity to get a whole bunch of home games. You're also going to go on the road and go to Providence and get tested early on in the season, see where things are at. You get to go down to the Bahamas, which the Hokies haven't left the country in the 4 years that I've been here. So I'm excited to get down there, and that tournament's always regarded, that one and Maui, regarded as one of the better ones in men's basketball. So to get a chance to go down there, guys will get tested early on, see where they're at. The ACC is, talking to people across the league, is one of those where it's so up in the air again. You've got so many transfers, so many new players. Duke's picked to win the league. Duke and Carolina are always going to be, a 1-2 punch that, have done great. And then Louisville is picked to finish second of the league too. That's going to be a couple of huge games for Virginia Tech as we go on the road and head out there way further along in the schedule. But, I like the way the schedule stacks up. There's a lot of Saturday games, a lot of Saturday afternoon games for students to be able to come out. And I think the schedule was rather good. The one that I didn't like was Virginia is going to be on New Year's Eve, the first game to welcome ACC play. I would have liked to see them moved around a little bit. The students are off campus, and New Year's Eve, there's a lot going on. But other than that, I think it's a good schedule to test them, but also to give them an opportunity to win a couple of games and get some momentum going early on in the year.
Now, to take a break away from the Hokies for a second, who are some of the projected contenders in the ACC, and what do you think about those?
Yeah, Duke and North Carolina are always going to be at the top. They're always going to be up there. Louisville's a team, too, who's turning some heads. They recruit really well. They've got a big NIL purse, basically, to be able to fall back on there, and they've done a great job. The interesting part to me is not only are there so many new players, there's so many new coaches. Florida State, Miami both have new coaches. A new coach for UVA over there. There's a lot of new faces throughout this league, and it's not kind of the ACC that maybe your parents or grandparents would remember with Coach Boeheim and Coach K and Coach Roy Williams, down at the sidelines forever. This is a different group in the ACC, and when it comes to coaches and players, so I think there's so much unknown this season throughout the entire league. I do think everyone's in agreement the league's much deeper than what it was last year. Last year the league got 5 teams in the NCAA tournament. I see that to be much higher this year, back to where it normally is, 8-9 teams getting into the NCAA tournament. But it's one of those things you don't really know until you get out there and start playing them. And it's really important for the ACC to have a good non-conference these first couple of weeks of the season to kind of stack you up and set you up for how many teams are going to be taken in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely.
Now, we would like to thank Zach Mackey again and want to for joining us and not only just telling us all the knowledge for basketball, and also want to thank Evan as well. And we also want to just be very, very excited for the basketball and women's and men's basketball seasons, and for just taking the time once again to just join us.
Of course. Thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And I'm Katie Tepsick. This was your Hokies basketball season preview. Thank you for joining us.